And I think that it's something that if you want to do it that way, it requires you to take action. It requires certain actions and requires you to put effort into it. But I think it's worth it, and I think the results speak for themselves. And I think the contrast between how a tough battleground state like Florida handled the election versus what we're seeing in some of these other states, I think that it's dramatic. And so rather than us be at the center of a Bush versus Gore in 2020, we're now being looked at as did it right, and the state that these other states should emulate. Of course, we had to take action to get to this supervisor of elections, and also suspended and removed the Palm Beach County supervisor of elections. Those two counties did a great job, and I commend both supervisors in those counties for all their hard work. I also appointed Laurel Lee as Secretary of State, and she conducted a review of our elections infrastructure. We had a particular focus on cybersecurity just because there have been threats in those areas, and took appropriate action. And we also had additional personnel ready to go for this election should there have to be more power to help people vote or to process votes. So I want to thank everyone who was involved. I want to thank Secretary Lee for all her hard work. I told her we want this to run smoothly. It's very important for public confidence and for voters. I also want to thank all the supervisors and all the election workers throughout the state of Florida who worked very, very hard and really did an admirable job up and down the state. Also, it's important that works well. Obviously, the machinery of democracy should run smoothly and transparently. I would note we're one of the few states in the country where you can follow the number of people that are voting in real time, the mail votes that are received, the early vote, the election day vote. The rest of these states, it's kind of like a black hole. Florida, you don't necessarily know how they voted as it's going, but you know how many Republicans are voting, how many Democrats, how many MPAs, and I think that really sets us apart. So I think that that's really important. Obviously, we get into elections because we want to get good results as well. I worked really hard in this campaign in a number of different ways. I think his barnstorming, the extent to which this campaigning matters, generally I don't know, but I think in his case, doing these big events, the electricity it generated when we were in Miami-Dade right on the eve of the election, was really an incredible thing to do. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. I also think the fact that he has really helped us with a lot of Florida issues, I think helped him. Wherever we needed hurricane relief, helping our military bases, our space infrastructure and space industries, Everglades funding, you name it, President's been there. And I think that was really a historic victory for President Trump here in the state of Florida. I also was able to help primarily through fundraising two of our candidates for U.S. Congress in South Florida, Carlos Jimenez and Maria Congress. I think they're going to represent South Florida very well. I think I've worked with Carlos obviously a lot this year dealing with coronavirus, and I can tell you Maria Elvira is going to be a superstar in the Congress. So we were happy to see them succeed. I also worked with Senator Simpson and Speaker-designate Sprowls on helping them amass resources and fighting those tough races. Eric Holder, the former Attorney General, poured in with some of his groups between $10 and $15 million to try to flip the state house in the state of Florida. The result was that the House Republicans gained 5 seats. So they didn't draw any blood. They lit a lot of money on fire. And I think that's a testament to Speaker-designate Sprowls and a lot of great candidates who were running for office throughout the state of Florida, and also Senator Simpson. Looks like we have 1 seat pickup by 20-some votes. Obviously, there's going to be there's a process there, but I think we would rather be in our position to win some really important races. He's got a great operation and did a great job. And look, at the end of the day, these people had an opportunity to run on 2 years of really successful and productive legislative work. The fact is, the last 2 sessions were very productive, historically so, and I think they had a lot to be able to campaign on. The final thing I say is just, and I'll be back talking a little bit more as this presidential election, but disappointed with how the networks handled the call of the state of Florida. The fact of the matter is, if you wanted to be aggressive like they were in the other direction, you could have called it as soon as the early vote and mail ballots came in from Miami-Dade. There was no way Donald Trump was going to lose with just that number. I understand being a little bit more cautious, let some votes come in, but by 9:30, this was in the bag, and you had this drawn out, and there was a real resistance to just recognize reality. In fact, when they called it, there were fewer votes outstanding than the margin between the two candidates. There was never a pathway, and that was clear from very, very early on. I think most of you who follow Florida politics agree with that. And I contrast that to an outlet like Fox News, which inexplicably calls Arizona without even a lot of the election vote being in from key areas where the president was likely to gather support. I think it was 70% of the precincts were reported. They jumped the gun on Arizona. A lot of the other networks still haven't gone for Arizona for that. So for Fox to be so resistant to calling Florida and yet jumping the gun on Arizona, I just thought was inexplicable. I don't think that that was done without some type of motive, whether it's ratings, whether it's something else. North Carolina should be called. There's not enough votes outstanding to be able to change that race. Georgia hopefully will be called today. That should be done. I have been talking with the White House. They think they're going to win Arizona. You look at how the margin has been reduced dramatically just in the last, I think, 6 or 8 hours. Of course, they're going to continue counting votes, I guess, for another day or two. Why this couldn't be done on election night, I don't know. But I just think it shows if Arizona does flip, what a huge blunder that Fox News would have made by doing that premature call. And again, if you want to be aggressive across the board. That would have meant you call Florida at 8:30, and they didn't do that. They waited when it was obvious that it was in the bag, and yet with Arizona, it was a little bit different. So that we the president has an advantage there. But we're in another election cycle. If you think about it, this kind of political prognosticating polling industry has not gotten elections right since 2012. They got 2012 right, that Barack Obama would be reelected. They did not predict 9 Senate seat gain in 2014. Clearly, they were wrong in 16. They missed huge races in 2018, including here in Florida, and they couldn't have missed this one, I think, any worse if you look at some of the things that were circulating over these last many weeks and months. And it's, if you're that bad at your job, maybe some of these prognosticators should find another line of work, because I can't think of another line of work where you can be wrong so many times and then still be there to be able to offer analysis going forward. So we're going to be watching very closely the country, but I would just say the Florida in a very transparent fashion, doing it in a way that was focused on efficiency. Obviously, we have a lot of opportunities, different ways for people to be able to cast a ballot, but producing results in a timely and transparent fashion. What you're going to have now in some of these other states, it's a very opaque process. There's not a lot of transparency. And when you go from one candidate winning by so much, if then that flips to another candidate 3 days later, even if everything is on the level on that, that is not something that inspires. States should have followed Florida's lead on this. And there's one state, Nevada, they announced, we're just not going to count ballots today. We'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Really? This is your one job. It's a presidential election. You're just going to take the day off when it's a 0.5% race between two candidates, which could be the determining factor potentially in who gets to 270? Man, I can tell you the people in Florida working in these elections, they work their tails off. They wanted to make sure people can come in and vote. They wanted the votes counted. They wanted the results published in a timely fashion, and they did a great public service for the people of this state. Around the rest of the country, and I don't think that confidence is there. So perhaps 2020 was the year that we finally vanquished the ghosts of Bush versus Gore. And as we watch what unfolds in the rest of the country, I do think you're going to continue to hear from people looking at how, if the third most populous state in the country can count 11 million votes, produce a result across the board, why can't some of these other states that are much smaller? And that's something that we're going to be watching. I'll be back to take questions probably sometime before the week ends. Thank you, guys.